Matt King, man, the myth, the legend, amazing interview that I'm going to dive into, that you're going to get an opportunity to hear about how action, how vision can lead to being part of a nine-figure family office, real estate investors, becoming a chief everything officer, a 23-year-old kid, just being not necessarily the right place at the right time, and he's going to say things that about luck but through action. And not only that, wait until you hear about the crazy and interesting story about bull riding and how that pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I'm super excited for this episode. Wait until you get a chance to hear and learn more from Matt King in this episode of Catching Knives. Oh my gosh, I'm super excited to have Matt King. Is actually like the man, the myth, the legend. For people that don't know Matt King, you're kind of like a mythical unicorn. The status that people are always talking about. Oh, I need a Matt King. I need a Matt King. That is in reference to you being the chief everything officer for David Osborn. You know, a nine-figure investor and big real estate agent in the KW world, and you kind of run everything behind the scenes. But I'd like to start with a little bit for people's sake, your origin story. Um, you know, how does a kid from Wisconsin end up running this nine-figure business, flying around on private jets, and bull riding in Austin, Texas?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited to be on with you and always love the time I get to spend with you and learn from you, and excited to be sharing my story with your audience. I always tell people it was dumb luck. That's the cop out answer. So I don't have to talk that long because I'm not super crazy social. The truth is I was born and raised in Wisconsin, small town, just north of Milwaukee. Come from a really good middle class family. My parents are amazing people. Dad's been at the same company for almost 40 years. Mom's run the Chamber of Commerce in the small town I'm from for actually this week was 20 years. They did a huge celebration for her, which I'm really proud of her for. And just a small town, super competitive growing up, always an athlete. Never really did well with accepting the first answer I was given. One of the things that I just applaud my parents immensely for was if we wanted something, it was always ours to go get, but we had to figure it out. So I like still to this day remember when we would come home from school on like a Friday night and I'd say like, hey, can we have pizza tonight? My mom would say, sure, you know where the phone book is. And like we'd have to call Pizza Hut or we'd have to call Domino's and we'd have to order. And so, here you are like a 10-year-old kid, you're nervous, like, could I please have a 14-inch? And it started to give me the courage and the confidence that if I had a choice in my life, um, I was the one that got to choose if it was for me or not. Like I got to do it. Now that backfired a little on them when I figured out how to buy a motorcycle off of eBay at age 18, and a lime green crotch rocket showed up in the front yard when my dad was cutting the grass. But they were always just like, if you want something, go get it, like figure it out. Um, Went to college for a little bit, and started a business at the same time, printing custom shirts and vinyl signs. And one night it came down to, do I write this paper, or do I print this 110 shirt order? And one of them was paying me $3,000 and the other one was costing me $30,000. And I kind of just said, school's not for me, and decided to drop out. Hindsight, I might have wish I would have finished or even just taken my time to finish just to say I did it and to have it. But it hasn't, it is what it is. Ran that little company for a while. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, said, hey, I'm going to go teach in the inner city schools of DC. And I kind of said, great, I'll come with you. And she never really fully asked me. I actually talked to her about that the other day. I'm like, you never really asked me. She's like, oh, no, I asked. I'm like, yeah, you really didn't. Like, I kind of just said I was going. Um, And it's like I told somebody the other day, like without her, I don't know that I would have had the courage to ever leave that small town. Like I always wanted more and I always wanted bigger. Um, but home was home. It was comfortable. And I was kind of afraid to do it without somebody like her, without that support system, that rock. So we moved to Washington, D.C. She was going to school to get her master's to teach. Had some money from my little business and decided to volunteer for the first 2 or 3 weeks we were out there. So I looked on Craigslist and I was like, volunteer opportunities in Baltimore, Maryland, like, see what's available. And I found this camp for children with incarcerated parents, like $500 stipend for 2 weeks, like 4 hours a day, whatever. I'm like, oh, that's perfect. I can walk there. We only had one car at the time. It just like checked all my boxes. So, here I go walking through Baltimore City to this camp and learned a lot from those kids, man. Talk about like struggle and success. And geez, I mean, they've been through everything, right? Like it was just mind blowing. And one day we had to take these kids to the inner cities of Washington, D.C., which they've never been to. It's like an hour and a half bus ride. They've never been. And so I get assigned a co-chaperone for my group, and it's this, white guy named Pat Hyman comes walking over. Is like, I'm Pat. I'm like, yeah, hey Pat, how are you? Like, nice to meet you. And we're sitting on the back of this yellow school bus, and here I am, 23 years old. Like, think I know what I don't know, but still very curious, still very learning based, and kind of said to Pat, like, so what do you do? He's like, oh, I'm a real estate investor. I'm like, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm a New York Times best-selling author. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Like one of those guys. Like, here we go. And long story short, I just learned a ton from him that day. Looked up his book, was like, okay, you are legit. Never wanted to be a real estate salesperson, but bought his book, 6 Steps to Seven Figures. Read it in a day, texted him, actually like Twitter messaged him and said, like, I read your book. What would it take to have lunch with you or coffee with you? And like, holy shit, I just like saw you 2 days ago. So just started to like reach out to him. How can I learn? How can I learn? Like, what did you do? How did you become an entrepreneur? What does that mean? What's passive income? Long story short, he hired me to help him sort of run his organization, which led to me help volunteering for Go Abundance, which Jake, you're a member of, and you got to be one of the longest members of, I know, founding member of for sure. Which led me to volunteer at a Go Abundance event, one of the first ones we did in Orlando, Florida. He told me I was going to go volunteer at this event, this mastermind, they called it. I was like, what the hell's a mastermind? Small town kid. I didn't know this stuff. So I went to Orlando, slept on the couch, heard Ricky Williams speak about choice and awareness and curiosity and all these crazy, interesting things, and met this guy named David Osborn, and was like, man, that guy's fascinating. Like, I want to be around people like that all the time. Met David again at another event 3 or 4 months later, and literally rewrote my 5-year vision. Said I live in Austin, Texas. I work for David Osborn. 2 weeks later, he called and said, what would it take to get you to Austin? I think you're talented. My world's kind of a mushroom cloud blowing up. And I said, I've never been to Texas. So my girlfriend and I flew here. She's now my wife, like I said, and been here ever since.
All right. So you met David. It was a few months later. David, we know David, we have experience, and obviously you know him very, very well. And I think he references you as his best friend. You've kind of been on the inner circle of him today. But when you're 23, 24, you're working with Pat, you come down to this mastermind, you said you met him at a conference, a couple months later. What was that first impression? Because I know for me, at least at 23, 24, like I was just like, I got things figured out. And David has I wouldn't say polarizing, but he just kind of, his energy, either visionary, people love him. I wouldn't say hate him, but he just gives a different vibe. What was your impression of him when you initially started or connected with him these first few times? And then how did that transition to you becoming the chief everything officer?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's the first time I've heard people don't like him. So we're going to have to talk about that later. But I would say the first time I ever met him, I was like, I just saw somebody that like my soul resonated with. Like I always kind of didn't feel like I fit in. Just always felt a little out of place. Like I'm not super social. I kind of like to be like a lone wolf, do my own thing, keep my head down. I'm not one to like be super flashy in your face. And I always kind of just felt like out of place a little bit. And when I first met David, it was like something inside my being was like, that's one of you. Like, that's kind of like part of you. And it was super like subconscious, super unique. And then of course he's like super intense, right? Like he's a very intense, very hard charging entrepreneur. I remember we were in Orlando and like we're like pouring people wine. Like I was on the go cruise. So you just kind of like serve however you can serve. Like think of a waitress or a waiter at a wedding. Like you're like, hey, can I have an appetizer? Sure, here you go. Like I need this. Sure, here you go. And I remember I was like pouring people wine, and we opened another bottle of David's wine, and I poured some into his glass, and then I poured some into Ricky Williams' glass. And he like pulled me aside later. He's like, "Don't give him that expensive wine. He doesn't know the difference. That's for me and my friends." Oh, okay, shoot. I didn't. I had no idea. Like, I'm sorry. And I just like knew that there was an intensity and energy with him. And then actually the next day, they went golfing, and him and his really good friend Rock Thomas went golfing, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to golf?" Because they knew I'd worked at a country club growing up. They knew I was a caddy and I loved to golf. And I said, "I don't want to golf, but I'd love to caddy for you guys." I'm like, "Caddy for us?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll just ride on the bag, rake the traps, pull the pin, do whatever." I mean, like here I am, this 23-year-old kid standing on the back of the golf cart, hearing two super, super successful, hard charging entrepreneurs collide, collaborate, discuss, debate. And I'm like, man, who am I to be on this golf cart? This is amazing. But also, while we were at the golf course, I got to see a different side of David, right? Like, not the business figure David, but the like servant side of David. Like, one of the things that people don't often recognize is he's probably got one of the biggest servant hearts that I've ever seen. To this day, there's days when I'll walk out of his house, and he'll grab my lunch bag. I'm like, "What are you doing, dude?" He's like, "You helped me so much. Just let me help you carry your lunch out." Like just little things like that. Um, I mean, like it's just like it's super special. And so I knew he was different. And I felt like a connection to him in a way like I kind of found somebody that marched to a beat similar to my drum, and that excited me. That was cool to me. And so then just I was, subconsciously attracted to who he was and who he was becoming, started following him, listening to him, etc. And then started implementing some of the things he preached. And once I did that and I saw my life start to change, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's where the gold is.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, when I say that is, I don't know that people dislike
No,
David.
I know. I
It's
was kidding.
the intensity of it. Like a lot of people like are intimidated by that. I think it is, or they think, oh, this guy's just after money, or and just in general. I think Go Abundance or guys that are kind of these alpha that are trying to always win, and that's why I feel like there's a kinship that you and I have is very much like I always kind of have to win.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I hate losing. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what it is. It's like, let's go throw things on the lawn. And I'm just like, I'm upset if I lose. And even as a kid playing sports, like you couldn't talk to me for like hours after a thing if we lost a game. Like I was beside myself. I know they're like, well, it's not your fault, like Johnny, kicked it and didn't turn the double play or do something. I was like, yeah, but it's like so angry. So, and I say David's intensity sometimes that people don't know him very much. So there's very few people, almost no one I know that got to know him or knows him on that thing. They say the same thing. Like, man, he's super like passionate, but he's also got this kind heart.
Yeah.
So,
no, I was just messing with you.
Yeah, I know you were. But so like you're in DC,
Mhm.
you meet David, you see these, this craziness, this passion and who he is. Tell me about some of the things that made that transition for you moving from DC, convincing your wife, some of your vision, board. Because I think this is very, very important because one of the things I talk about is mindset.
Mhm.
Every limitation that exists in our life is our own individual mind. And you did some very unique things. And maybe the universe or some things with
Yeah.
the apartment helped usher those on. So what were some of those things that you did that ushered you out of DC to Texas?
Yeah. So the first thing was I started writing a 5-year vision. Like I started to have a vision for my life beyond this week or next week or this month or even this year. I was like, man, what has to happen in 5 years for my life to be epic? And it wasn't like just like, oh, I got a new car. It was like crystal clear. My body fat's this, my kids' names are this, etc. Like I got super clear with my 5 year vision. And it was something that they preached at these events I was volunteering at, these GoBundance events. Like Pat had a 5 year vision, David had a 5 year vision. Everybody had a vision. And I'm like, okay, here's all these successful entrepreneurs. Success leaves clues. So I'm just going to take what they do and just use it, right? Like I heard somebody the other day that said, like, if you want to do what great people are doing, and great can be your own definition, whether it's a writer or a reader or a golfer or an entrepreneur, just do what they do. Like copying is the greatest form of flattery. So I remember, like, I was like you, Jake, I was a super competitive athlete. And I watched David speak, and he's like got this purple journal, and he stands up front with this like little purple journal. And I'm, candidly, I was in judgment. My eyes rolled back in my head. I'm like, here we go. Like this dude's got a purple journal. What did I sign up for? And he starts talking about goals and vision and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's something here. And he's like, you got to have goals. I'm like, yeah, I got goals for my life. I know what I want. I, want to be a millionaire by the age 30. Like I had some goals, but not like written down like he has, not like I have today. And then he talked about his vision board, like you alluded to. What's your vision? And he said, this was my vision board. And somebody raises their hand, like, wait, why was that your vision? He's like, because all of this has come true. So my wife's drawn another one. I'm like, oh my God, buy a purple journal, make a vision board, like do all these things, right? Because I'm like, if it worked for him, it can work for me. Why not? And so I think like the biggest thing I did, Jake, was I had a vision for my life. And then I had the courage and the support from my wife to choose when things showed up for me. So I had this vision, and when things showed up, I just chose. Like I remember we were in Florida with my wife's family, and they're really good friends, and we were sitting in the pool, and I'm like, yeah, I think we're going to move to Texas to work for this guy. And I remember people telling me I was crazy. They're like, you don't even know this guy, and you're going to move across the country. And I remember literally looking at this one lady, Kim Schwei, looking her in the face and saying, something tells me that this will change our family's economic destiny, and I have to follow my intuition. And like it was, financially driven for sure, but it was also like, who could I become on the journey? And fortunately, he didn't live in like Midland, Texas, or some crazy city where nobody wanted to go, right? Like I brought my girl, again, she was my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. We showed up in Austin, and it was like we both looked at each other like, heck yeah, this is way better than DC. And then to make things even easier, our apartment in DC got robbed the weekend we were in Texas. So we were both like, that's easy. We're moving to Austin, no questions asked. Had applied for a lease before we even left this place. And believe it or not, I moved to Austin, Texas to work for David. He offered me $25,000 a year to work for him. I was still working for Pat Hyman at the time, part-time. So I think my total sort of gross income was like 60, 65. But I literally packed up and moved across the country, and just something told me that, this was right for us and this was our next thing. And we did it. So, to answer your question, it was really having a vision and then having courage to choose when it showed up. I think a lot of people have a vision and they think it's going to be wrapped in this red box with a bow on it. And when it shows up in a green, cylinder, they don't choose it because they're like, oh, that doesn't look exactly how I thought it was going to look. And so I've just had the courage to choose.
Following that up, as I think one of the things is I talk about, and I've heard you say this as well, is action creates, like momentum, or it opens up the aperture. And just sometimes like you don't need to know where or how to get to that end version of your vision and your goal, or the whole Alice in Wonderland where the Mad Hatter, like, where do you want to go? And it says, I don't know. And so it's like, it doesn't matter which direction you go. But for you, creating that action and then making that decision to move down. I mean, you didn't start $25,000 a year. David saying, hey, Matt, I think you got something. I don't know. Let's go try to figure it out. But now in that time period, and obviously, I know, because of the transparency of GoBundance, David's net worth, since you've become part of that at a $25,000 a year to now being this implementer throughout everything in his life, you've helped him significantly grow his net worth. So, like, what were some of those action things that you've done? And then how has that manifest out through your growth in the organization and as a human, as a person?
I mean, I would say, the one thing that I try to coach implementers on, or like integrators on, is your highest and best use is to make sure the visionary is working on their most important things, whether it be three or five, whatever their most important things are. If you're pulling them back into anything but those three to five things, you are doing them a disservice. And I realized, David was this brilliant deal sourcer, talent sourcer, visionary. And if he was doing anything but those things, I was doing him a disservice. So to this day, I still try not to bring him into drama, gossip, litigation, mediation. Like, I want him sourcing deals, talking to talent, recruiting talent, creating a vision for what we're trying to do. And then, being a dad and a husband to his family. That's what he needs to be doing. And if I ask him to do anything but that, which I have to do from time to time. Like, it's necessary, but I'm doing them a disservice by that. So I kind of try to keep that in the front of my head. I've also been super fortunate, Jake. Like, I've been around some amazing people, like, yourself, Terry Rose, who used to run GoBundance and be David's admin, taught me a million things. Still to this day, love her, and best coworker ever. Like, her and I used to run wind sprints in David's neighborhood when we worked out of the house. We were always competing in something in the middle of the day. Learned a bunch from her. Very fortunate to have the family I have. Like, look, a lot of where I'm at, I default and say it was luck. I know I've chosen, I know I've done some stuff to get here and stuff, but I just try to remain humble and keep David doing what he should be doing, and keep learning and keep being learning based. Like, when I talk to you, it's, how can I learn from Jake today? What can I learn from Jake today? And then what can I give Jake today? And it's not like a conscious action anymore, but it's like, I know when I'm talking to you, if I've got another hotel deal or development deal or something else going on, like, you're a sounding board that I can reach out to because you're an expert in the space. And what I've done in the role I work for with David is I've surrounded myself with experts in spaces that I can reach out to and sort of engage with at any moment in time to help us make sure we're making the right decisions possible. So whether it's a life insurance matter, or a legal matter, or a real estate investment matter, or a biotech matter, or rupturing my Achilles, I have this amazing network that David's built that I've gotten to plug into, that we keep adding to, that has all these geniuses in their own space around it. And I just get to be the air traffic controller saying, like, oh, Achilles plane, I need you to come land and tell me what to do. Okay, great. Thanks. Now I need the recovery plan. Like, let's go find who's good at that. And just sourced experts for everything we do.
So I want to put a pen in that because I want to come back around the implementation of things and really how you have become this integrator role and how you've been able to layer to that. So keep that in mind, but I want to jump out at kind of out of thing. Your Achilles, bull riding. So how did you rupture your Achilles, riding bulls? I didn't, you text me and I was like, I didn't know you rode bulls. So
Yeah,
tell me about that. What happened?
So again, one of the things that GoBundance preaches is you've got to feed your spirit. You've got to do things to get outside your comfort zone, whether it's climb a mountain, rock climb, skydive, go on an epic trip. You have to do things that sort of stretch your comfort zone. So when you're looking at a $10 million deal, you're like, well, I just rode a bull and thought I was going to die. So this is irrelevant. Like, this is an easy choice. Now I can just get analytical. So I've kind of become like an adrenaline. I've always been an adrenaline junkie, but I've kind of become more intentional about the adrenaline junkiness that I have. And a couple of years ago, we were doing vision boards with our really good friends on New Year's Eve. And I remember I was like, okay, I want to do something epic. This was 2019. So this would have been for the 2020 year. So thank goodness COVID, right? Beautiful year. But I had this vision board, and I remember our friends Ryan and Tony laughing at me because I had a bull riding picture up there. And they're like, you're going to ride a bull? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to ride a bull. How did you come to that? I'm like, well, I was looking through the magazines. I was like, should I go skydiving or should I ride a bull? And I was like, I'll go ride a bull. Nobody can say they rode a bull. 2020 happened. Obviously, we all know what happened. I was supposed to do a bull riding school, which hindsight probably would have been a logical way to do it, but that got canceled because of COVID. So then I'm like, well, I really was excited about that goal. I'm going to add it again for 2021. Sometimes we fail our goals for things outside of our control. And, I could have pushed through COVID and tried to find a way to ride a bull and stuff, but it just, didn't align. So I'm going to move it to next year. So 2021, I'm speaking at an Emerge and Ascend event, and they asked me, how do you stretch yourself? I'm like, I set crazy goals, like ride a bull. And kids like, how are you going to do that? I'm like, oh, I found this bull riding school out of Dallas. I'm going to go. I've called the coach. I'm like, hey, I don't want to do 3 days. Can I just pay you for a private session for 1 day? They're like, yeah, but it's 8 hours. So I still wasn't excited about it because I don't want to become a bull rider. And the kid, this guy in the audience raises his hand. He goes like, my cousin's friend's uncle's brother owns a bull ranch. Do you want me to connect you? I'm like, absolutely. That sounds like a great idea. So here we go, December 30th to Junction, Texas, which I never even had heard of, 2 hours sort of southwest-ish, or maybe just straight west of Austin, to ride a bull. My wife came with me. Our really good friends, Ryan and Tony, came with me. Everybody thought I was crazy, probably am a little bit crazy, and I wanted to just do something that, was epic, right? Like that just stretched me. Rode the bull, lasted almost 8 seconds. They started yelling, get off, because he was working his way towards the fence. So like, well, how do you get off a bull? I guess you just let go, right? So you let go, kind of got launched into the fence, landed in a weird way where my spur, which to this day I still probably shouldn't have wore spurs, but my spur got stuck in the ground. My foot landed on the fence and, snapped my Achilles. And got up and looked at the guy and I was like, hey, we never really talked about the dismount. He's like, the dismount's never a problem. He's like, people don't really make it out of the chute often. He's like, I can't believe you stayed on that long. And I'm like, I can't either, but I think I'm hurt. And then, they wanted me to ride another bull because I was supposed to ride 2, which I think I'll go back and ride that other bull again. That Bobo was the bull's name I was supposed to ride second. But, I knew it was snapped and people think, I'm an idiot and I'll never do it again. But the adrenaline rush from sitting on that fierce creature that was just like breathing heavily, knew it was about to be showtime for it. Like my heart has never beat like that in my life. And even to this day, like, here we are 3 weeks later, 2 weeks post-op, and I sit and look at things and go like, compared to like the feeling I had to put my legs over the side of that bull, like, man, this deal is small, or that conversation's easy. Like that stuff's easy. So try to do things to stretch myself to make things in day-to-day life, like put them in perspective and kind of say like, wait, that's not life and death. That's just an uncomfortable conversation and I can have that.
That's awesome. And I also like the fact that you want to go back to Bobo and, conquer that second bull. So, it's a little recovery process.
Back, man.
So
yeah, they kept saying Bobo's super nice. Bobo's like a pet. You can pet Bobo. And we like walk up and Bobo's in like the pen getting ready to like go into the chute. And Bobo starts like scraping the ground and snorting and like just is staring right at me. Like, I know you're coming for me and you will not win. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But, the winning side of me goes like, I got to go back and get Bobo.
Get Bobo for 8 seconds, and just be like, that's it, that's awesome. So back to your integrator, implementing role, things like that. That is something that is, kind of like a superpower that you've had. I don't think you've, obviously you had Terry that kind of helped put some systems and other things like that around it, but I hear a lot of people all looking for Matt Kings. I'm always looking for people, to as a visionary to help integrate some of those in the mundane to get stuck in the day to day. Like, so how do you, one, I think, start out, how did you discover that was your superpower? And then secondarily is, how do you like bring people, you mentioned kind of coaching or helping some people out. Like, what is that, the next version, Matt King 2.0 or 3.0, expanding that beyond just how much work you can do?
Yeah. So, I mean, I recognized quickly how, what is it? Gino Wickman talks about rocket fuel, right? Like how quickly you can be rocket fuel for an entrepreneur. If you're like a servant-based individual, learning-based, and like selfishly, I'm in all these meetings with David. I'm going to all these places with David. Like I'm learning. I'm getting like an MBA in like entrepreneurship. Like I should have been paying him, hindsight, right? Like, I mean, I'm so fortunate to know what I know by being on the journey with him. And I realized quickly, like he was always late for meetings. I was working out of his house and it was like, first meeting might've been 9 o'clock. And it was always like this like tornado to get him out of the house. Like, yelling up the stairs, where's my journal? Where's my notebook? Where's my wallet? Where's my glasses? My keys? I can't find my keys. Where's my coffee? And I was like, wait, what if we just put all this stuff in his car? Backed his car to the garage and just said, dude, everything's in your car. Walk out the front door, sit down, hit drive and go. And like I saw how like drastic that made a difference in like his morning, right? Like it just made it this calm, like easy thing. And I was like, well, where else can I do that? And that, like, to this day is still like what I ask myself, like, how can I make his life easy? How can I make his life smooth so that he can spend his mental power doing his genius, which is creating a vision, and then passing that vision off to me and letting me implement. Um, I think I'm also very, very, very lucky to have met David. The way he leads and the way he operates is very unique. He's very comfortable without a lot of details. He's very comfortable with a lot of like sort of vagueness around things. Um, and he's very comfortable being an open book, living in a glass house. Like he doesn't, he's very comfortable with people living in his email. He's very comfortable with people knowing where he's at all the time. And I think, him being that way has allowed me to become the best I can for him because I know where he's going. I see his goals. I know his vision. I know how much he wants to donate. I know what he wants to do with his wife and his kids. I know where he wants to vacation. And so like I can help align his world to do those things. I think, version 2.0 is interesting. I mean, David and I have explored some coaching things. I've talked to my sister about doing some public training and some public workshops. At the end of the day, my number one goal is to help other people and leave a legacy, like create something so big that it can outlive me and it can outlive my kids. And if helping entrepreneurs build an epic life is the way to do it, I'm all for it. I think I am always still looking for like talented people for David's organization too. I've kind of like selfishly looking in the mirror what the DNA blueprint for a second in command looks like. And I know like it's that server who doesn't have to write down your order and remembers to bring you a Coke when you've got a third of it left still, and you're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And it's those little skills and knacks that you have to find in an individual to be an integrator because it's not always glamorous. You're behind the curtain and you're getting water and you're shoveling poop and you're doing like the things that you know you're not on the big stage like Elon Musk showing off the Cybertruck, but you're the one making sure the Cybertruck's on stage and ready to go when it's time to go. And so, I think version 2.0 could look like training, could look like coaching, could look like helping people hire, helping people recruit, and then most importantly, continuing to manage and grow David's family office and David's net worth. And selfishly, it serves me too, right? Like the bigger he gets, the bigger I can get, and the bigger his world can get, the bigger my world can get, and vice versa. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And it's, I think something that people, listening should take note because I was like, I want, some of that. I want Matt King's insights into my world. And also, how could he potentially help bring some of the things that he sees that, synthesize down. I have a question for you of that time period that you've been working for, David, and you have some, super amazing things. Like my mind is blown every time I get to sit down with David on some of the things, the systems that are in place. Like he was showing me, some of his, you spoke of his journals, like he's categorizing those to his different companies and how people and you or others have gone through that and just implement all the things that they can and then are only leaving the things that are left to David. Like I was just like, that's amazing. That's so awesome. I love that. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. What has been one of or maybe your favorite failure during that time periods of that growth that maybe lesson learned or just funny or what is during that time period that you've been growing with?
There's so many little things. I mean, and the funny thing is, Jake, and this is, I think, true of all of life, they feel so heavy in the moment and you look back and you laugh. Like I remember one time him and his friend Hal Elrod were flying a steamboat and we had his car at the wrong airport. So they landed at an airport 30 minutes away from the car, but 10 minutes away from his house. So here he is. It's like 11 o'clock at night. He calls me. He's like, my car's not there. I'm like, it's certainly there. Like, I know it's there. I know it's there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's at the wrong airport. Like, wow. And in the moment I was like mortified. I felt terrible. And they had their kids and their bags, and it's winter and their ski gear. And yeah, he wasn't thrilled and he wasn't happy. We look back, and I mean, I kind of laugh about it. He probably doesn't even remember it. But it felt really heavy in the moment. I think the greatest thing that you can do is you can fail and become aware of why you failed, and you'll never fail again. I mean, we're human. We should fail every day. We should be making mistakes all the time. But now I know to make sure that the car is at the right airport because of that failure. So I learned from it. Now, if I did it a second time or a third time, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. He probably been like, yeah, that's one too many, you're out. But one of the things I've always prided myself on, and I think it comes from my parents and my family and my sister and my wife, is like, you make a mistake and you learn from it, you grow, you move on, and you pick yourself up. You don't beat yourself up. You go, okay, that sucks. I'm not going to sulk over it. I'm just going to, move on. Actually, Wally was telling me the other day, he's reading a book about Tiger Woods. And I guess when Tiger Woods was young, he would give himself 10 steps to beat himself up over a bad shot. On the 11th step, he had to move on to the next shot. And I think that's, how you have to live life. Like, beat myself up for an hour about that. And, middle of the night, lost some sleep, got frustrated, whatever. But then the next day I was like, okay, cool. What can I do today to be great? What can I do today? So yeah, there's a lot of little funny, quirky stories like that, where there's like little foolish things that happen where you're like, yeah, that was so dumb. What was I thinking? But it happens. It just happens.
Yeah, that's it was interesting. So we were talking about the Park City event
Yeah.
recently. One of the guys was talking about they were making a prosthetic arm, and they were trying to expand this to Africa, and they had this person that was going to volunteer to help them do that, and they made the arm, and it was a right arm, and the person was missing their left arm. So like they made the wrong arm. And so it's just like some of these things are just like all this planning, all these other things, and it's like, it's the wrong airport. It's the wrong arm. It's the other things. And I mean, of course, and all stress is the same.
Yeah.
The car not being there and having to wait an extra 20, 30 minutes feels as intense as if you're losing on a $10 million deal. Like, I mean, it feels the same. It's all the same internally. But then how to recover. I like that, the 10 steps. And I feel Hal is awesome at that too. He's kind of like monk-like and be like, can I change it? No. All right, I'm over it. And just moving and rolling on. So,
yeah.
So what are some of the things, I mean, you talked about, and I want to try to wrap this up, is give some kind of maybe tactical things that people can utilize. The vision that you were talking about, obviously creating a vision board, but David being an avid reader and GoBundance pushing these, are there certain books, or are there certain things that you've been exposed to that have really made a big impact in that success of changing your trajectory in the last, call it 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tribe of Millionaires is an awesome, easy read for everybody to read. I mean, whether it's GoBundance or it's your friend circle or it's your family, we all need a tribe to connect with, and a tribe that's going to hold us accountable to what we want. If you're hanging out with people that eat at Old Country Buffet and McDonald's and Burger King, and you're like, I want to, win the fittest man in the world, you're probably going to fail because the people around you aren't going to help support that. So Tribe of Millionaires is one of my favorites. Wealth Can't Wait is another one that I've read like a million times, obviously, because David wrote it. But the concepts around building wealth to me were like sort of mind blowing. Like, I knew there was wealth to be made. I worked at a country club growing up, and had seen some wealth, but never really gotten to experience it with like my hands and see it. And so like getting a book and applying the concepts and thinking about it was really like earth shattering to me. My favorite, probably to this day, book is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. It's a lot about stoicism, and most importantly, just how literally the title says, like, your ego is your enemy. And I think, to touch on the failures, oftentimes the reason we feel so bad during failures is because of ego and pride more than anything. And so setting your ego aside, checking it at the door and going like, who do I need to be the greatest, servant to this organization today? I mean, it comes full circle automatically. It's like super amazing to me. So I think those are some like easy, quick reads that I suggest everybody read. And then one of the books that I read really like early on in my journey was it's called like Smart Couples or Quick Couples Get Rich. Or like I'll have to text it to you, but basically the whole concept of the book was while you're dinks, dual income with no kids, live 100% off of one of your salaries and save 100% of your others. And I remember my wife was making more than me at the time. She was a teacher, and I was like, we're living in DC, and I'm like, we're gonna live 100% off of your salary, and we're gonna, or excuse me, we're gonna live 100% off of my salary. We're gonna save 100% of yours. She's like, whatever, like you're crazy, dude. But she did it. And then when we moved to Austin, an opportunity to buy a house showed up. It was like, you gotta buy that house. And because we made that decision for a year prior, in 12 months, we saved 100% of her salary. We had like $35,000 in the bank and could afford the down payment on the house, could afford to move to Austin, could afford all of these things. And it was like hindsight, it wasn't even that painful. Like in the moment, it probably felt heavy, it felt real, but like that little nugget in that book, like literally catapulted us to be able to continue to make cool choices for like our family and our like, sort of like economic situation. And I think that's true of every book, Jake. There's like 1 to 3 nuggets in every book that if you just take them and implement them, just one, just two, just three, like from every book, your life will change exponentially. Unbelievable.
And that's, man, one of the things that I wish I got into earlier. It probably wasn't until like, my 30s that I really started reading, a book really, and I say this a few different times, is leverage. Leverage is one of the most important things that exist in life, is leverage, from a financial mortgage, leverage of using, having people in your life like Matt Kings that can leverage, your superpowers to an exponential kind of component. Leverage of other people's knowledge. And a book is probably typically like 10 or 20 years of someone's life that they're condensing down into, call it a 3-4 hour, version of it. And they're getting those little nuggets, and there's going to be little things in every one of those. And it's blown my mind. And that's why I try to get, 50 plus books a year. Why that tribe has been, and each one of those, I've not heard the Smart Couples.
I mean, it's really for people early on in their journey. I'll send you the title so you can put it in like the show notes or something.
I do have kids. I had 3, so I don't think that's going to work. But
but
I mean, honestly, we do that already. Fortunately, we're blessed. We're on the other side of some of those financial freedom windows. But man,
those things are important. Those things are important early.
So this has been, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I feel like, you and I have known each other for years. Every time that I get a chance to spend time with you, I learn a bunch of stuff, and I feel like everyone out there has something to teach you, and they have a unique genius. And I feel, very privileged to have and tap into a little bit of Matt King's genius. So if someone's looking to get in contact with you, and maybe you decide to do some coaching or implementation or other things like that, maybe it exists now, maybe it doesn't. How can people get a hold of you, or the best place to try to reach out? Or is there anything that people can do to add value to you?
Yeah, I think to answer the last question, to add value to me is just to take action for your own life and your own destiny and your own choices. Like David said that early on in my career with him. He's like, before I even was working for him, he kind of told me like the best thing you can do for me is to take action on what you told me. Pat would say the same thing. And now I tell people that I'm like, man, I'll just keep giving until you stop choosing. Once you stop choosing, then it's easy for me. But I want people to be the best versions of themselves. If people reach out through david@davidosborn.com, all of that filters back to me. Otherwise, I can give you my email. It's mking@droinb.com. People can email me and get a hold of me. I delete my Instagram frequently on my phone, but I've blocked myself out of my Facebook account. So I literally can't get in. So if you Facebook message me, it will get to me at some point from somebody, but it won't be me seeing it today. it's just, man, it's such a time suck. So I just try to get rid of that stuff as frequently as I can. And then, yeah, I mean, Jake, I have immense respect for you, the man you are as a family man, the way you follow up with people on those run videos you send all the time, just checking in, and you just have a genuine heart. And I really appreciate being on your show today.
Awesome. Well, you guys, we appreciate you on Catching Knives. Obviously, a contrarian investing approach. You can see how people like Matt, become that rocket fuel. If you don't have to be that visionary, you don't have to be that person that is, the David Osborns of the world, the Elon Musk. There's, and a greater percentage of people that can work underneath of that and get the accolades, the backup quarterback, the GM, Billy Bean of the Oakland A's, putting the right people on the right seat of the bus. Matt is massively successful at that. I appreciate the time. Guys, thanks for checking out another episode.